What is there to say about Chedeville saxophone mouthpieces? True, handmade Chedevilles. Surprisingly, quite a bit. This is Charles Chedeville, Paris. Artistic facing, double CC, 6 for tenor saxophone. And the first thing that I'll say about it is that it is definitely Charles' work. Charles Chedeville's handmade pieces have an identity. This, an alto saxophone mouthpiece I have, many handmade Charles Chedeville B-flat pieces I have with the CC, and even an E-flat piece I have, all have a very similar personality. Now, unfortunately, that fits the concept of even modern clarinet more than it fits the concept for saxophone. And that's what we run into when it comes to, first of all, resale value, but also how saxophone has evolved over the last many years. Let me zoom in a bit more. One thing you notice is the chamber is extremely large. And that's a can of worms. It's so scooped out. The baffle is also really scooped out. And so you can imagine this has an extremely dark sound, more of what we would expect from 1920s or 30s saxophone. And it's funny how, comparatively, clarinet has changed very little since that time. Saxophone has changed very much. Today's classical saxophone mouthpieces, in many ways, have a lot in common with, more cutting American sound, jazz saxophone sound, and most classical saxophone players will disagree with that. But if you compare it to how this sounds, you'll absolutely agree. So another very interesting example. So this doesn't have any markings on it. That's not a CC. That's just... but this says C.H. Shedville. Well, so I have a clarinet mouthpiece that's like this, and this is unbelievably rare, because H. Shedville is Henri Chedeville. And Henri Chedeville clarinet mouthpieces are considered by many the quote-unquote holy grail. This has a C before it, but the C is in a different font from that C. So this C was added later, so both Chedevilles worked on this. That being said, I think both Chedevilles worked on every Henri Chedeville mouthpiece. And it's just this example doesn't have the CC marked here. So that's interesting. This has an even bigger chamber and is even darker, even more scooped out. I actually think the Charles Shed sax mouthpiece plays better. So both of these mouthpieces are, if not original, they're very close to original. That looks original to me. The table might have a few swipes on it, but these mouthpieces are so close. The tip openings are unbelievably close, and it's just not characteristic. I'm not sure if that tip rail is original, but it again, the texture looks original. It does play a lot like what I expect a Charles Chedeville mouthpiece, true low logo Charles Chedeville mouthpiece, to play for clarinet. So that is something to consider. On that note, this is the same thing, Charles Chedeville, steel ebonite up there, Paris, artistic facing, CC, no number. I believe the no number ones are earlier. And this absolutely is original. And see, that looks a lot like the tenor. Except somebody drilled holes in it for a ligature, which I took out, and unfortunately the holes go all the way through, which is unfortunate. Once again, that very large scooped out chamber. So I bring this up, and that baffle is much more similar to the Charles Chedeville artistic facing for tenor sax that you just saw, not the Henri Charles. So this is very interesting. Again, do I feel there is potential to perhaps open this up, sound a little bit more modern? I do. I find it so interesting that, for example, the Jody Jazz Chedeville mouthpieces don't play like this at all. And they do feature a round chamber. And of course their design has the Egyptian scroll like the later Charles. This is later. It says made by Charles Chedeville, Paris. That's the modern logo. I've had a couple of these for clarinet, and they are like jazz players, which is very interesting. This just has a little 13, but I want you to remember the font of that 3, because we're going to come back to it. This is absolutely clean, mint original. Nice tip rail. That looks a lot like the Henri, by the way. Same chamber. And, yeah, it does not look too much like Charles' actual work. This is my least favorite. And again, all of these are unbelievably close tip opening. When I mean close, I mean if we're thinking that a C star is like 0.067 inches, this is like 0.050. All of these are unbelievably close. So again, I'm judging them based off how they are original. This is one of the rarest mouthpieces. I've never seen anything like this. H Shedville, no C before it. If this was a clarinet mouthpiece, again, people would go crazy. It's granadilla wood. It's for bass or bari sax. Honestly, I don't know and I can't tell, because it kind of works on both. This is a different blank. This has something written on it. BTE SGDG Deposé patent 412725. There is a signature by Eugene Berceau. The blank was finished by Eugene Berceau. Later pieces have the little interlocking C's like the Charles Artistic Facing. Took Berceau's insignia for himself. Okay, somebody was biting this. This has a crack through it, but we'll notice a lot of the same things. Very large chamber, though not quite as big as you'd expect. That's because this is, in fact, for bari, I think. And that looks more like Henri's tenor baffle, less like Charles. This thing actually plays pretty great for, again, the period saxophone. You hear clarinetists from the 1930s, and in a lot of ways it could be how clarinet players are today, with some subtle differences. Sax players from the 1930s, it's like they're on a different planet. And one more. This came in the same group as that. And there's a little France, a little 3, and that 3 is the same font as that Beaux Arts Charles. This has a lot of the same designs, which you see on bari mouthpieces and bass mouthpieces of the period, but it's basically a copy, except this one is rubber. Same chamber. That baffle looks a little more, maybe a little more like Charles to me, but this is what I'm saying is this is a rubber version of it. So what do I say about Chedeville sax mouthpieces? It's kind of like Otto mouthpieces for clarinet. You get a great Otto tenor mouthpiece, it might be worth a lot of money. It might be the concept that's in vogue today and in the past. But for clarinet, maybe not necessarily the case. Same thing with Meyers, New York Meyers. For alto, that's the concept. For clarinet, that's not the concept. That doesn't mean to say that New York Meyers clarinet mouthpieces don't play great. I have a New York Meyers for clarinet, and it plays fantastic. I have some Otto for clarinet that play fantastic. And I do think these, maybe with some work, can also play fantastic. I think the jury's out, but I do want to get these worked on, maybe bring a little bit of this great rubber and great artistry and just bring it into the modern idea of what a saxophone should sound like. Destroying history in the process, perhaps a little bit, but I'm not even sure the Chedvilles were saxophone players. That's my final point. I think Lalande, who took over the company, was a sax player, or at the very least a bass clarinet player, because his bass clarinet pieces are better than the Charles and Henri bass clarinet mouthpieces that I've played. And certainly Lalande sax pieces are much better, especially later ones, in my opinion.